So I remember the days of the past where I was miserable in the late 90s. My family fought more than it got along. I had a voice less often than I didn't have a voice. I was constantly screaming. It was just an absolutely miserable time, and all I could think about is I want to get out of this place. At only 17 years old, I was ready to begin adulthood, far beyond what many others in the same age bracket were willing or even ready to do. In that moment of my life, I would say that I was in survival mode. It was all about surviving. It was not about thriving, which is really where we want to be. So in that moment, I was living a life without any real purpose. So how many of you, just by show of hands, have New Year's resolutions already set? 1, 2, 4. Okay. How many of you have goals for next year? Okay, but you don't call them New Year's resolutions. Give me some examples. What are some examples of some goals that you have set for next year?
No hamburgers.
No hamburgers, okay?
No French fries.
All right,
Seriously.
that's tough.
Pay off some debt.
Pay off some debt. All right, what else?
Focus on health.
Focus on health. Anything else?
Making time for myself.
Taking time for yourself? Okay. I want to ask you all a question. Why do you have those goals? And are those goals about something more than yourself? A lot of times we fail at achieving goals and New Year's resolutions. By the way, this statistic is 80% by February fail. I'm a statistic, trust me, I know. Part of the reason that we don't know, this leads me, I'm going to give you 3 things that we can focus on to be more successful with our goals next year. Goals, New Year's resolutions, whatever you want to call them. I've got a little hint behind me that you can follow along. But our why, the first thing, is that your why must be bigger than yourself. You've all heard Know Your Why. I know a lot of you probably know Simon Sinek, and he says start with why, and he's even connected with Alex here at our organization and tried to help him understand his why. But it's not just knowing your why, it's also knowing that your why is bigger than yourself. So let me give you an example. I know that I need exercise, and I know that I need to actually kill a few pounds. But the reason I want to kill a few pounds is not just so I look in the mirror and think, gosh, you look awesome. Your wife should be honored to be with you. No, it's because I have 4 kids, aged 10 and under, and a wife who's constantly stressed out dealing with them all the time. And if I don't do what I need to do to stay up to speed, I can't keep up with that. So the goal to actually get in shape is not just about me. The goal is actually about what it's going to do for my family. I'll give you another example. Years ago, I had gotten a scholarship out of high school, and I was going to teach biology to high school students. And as time went on, because of some of the drama that I was dealing with in my family, I sort of just stopped caring about school, and I gave up the scholarship by simply flunking out. And I just stopped going to college. But at some point, I got together with my best friend, who is today my wife, and I was working 2 jobs at one point to try to keep us going in the small apartment that we had. And so I was working at UPS full-time as an administrative assistant in an IT department, and I was also delivering pizzas for Pizza Hut. I came home after a long night of delivering pizzas, and I was just exhausted because I had worked both jobs that day. And when I opened the door to the apartment, my wife was there sleeping on the floor. It's a long story, but we had 2 of her sisters and her mom in the 1 bedroom next to us. So we were sleeping on the floor in the living room. And I looked at her, and it was something clicked in that moment where I said, I'm going to have a future with this woman. I'm going to have children with this woman. And if I don't do something to prepare for that, I am not going to be the man and the father that they need me to be. And that registered in my mind so powerfully that I decided I need to get my butt back to school. I need to get an education so that I can now get a job that will actually provide enough income to take care of them. So I began to work full-time and go to school full-time. I did this for 4 years. At one point, it's going to start to sound like the climbing up the mountain barefoot in the snow type of situation, but we had one car, and we're driving across town. I'm dropping her off at work. She's coming to get me at lunchtime so that we can exchange the car. Then we got to go back to work, and then at the end, we got to exchange the car again so that I can go 30 miles out to where I went to school, all to go back home late at night so I could do it all over again. And it was tough. And it was in my early 20s, so I knew if I didn't do it then, I probably wouldn't have the energy, the capacity, and the time later in my 30s and 40s to do that. But I recognized in that moment that my why was bigger than myself. So if your goals are not set in such a way that your why is bigger than you, that it extends to others beyond yourself, your chances of failing are at least 80% by February. The next thing is that you need to be surrounded by big people. What do I mean by big people? I've talked about in this room before something that I call my inner circle. I actually have 5 men in my life that are part of this inner circle. I learned about the inner circle back in probably around the 2014, 2015 time, and I began to pay attention to who I was surrounding myself with. And as time went on, I discovered that there were 5 distinct people, especially this year, it really stood out strong to me, that I wanted to make sure that I stay connected with on a regular basis. Because each of these 5 people have invested in me in such a way that I would not be where I am if it weren't for them. They are bigger than me, and part of what I mean by that is sometimes they want me to succeed more than I want to succeed. Sometimes they know my why clearer than I know my why. And so just to give you a couple of examples, I have one that I talk to almost every day. 90+% of the days do not pass without us having some type of an encouraging conversation. And there are days when I just feel awful. My emotion tends to go up and down. It's garbage from the past that I'm still wrestling with. But I've been able to smooth that out simply because I have one person that comes to me and he's such a great encouragement that it is literally impossible, I've tried, to stay negative, to stay upset, to stay depressed in the presence of this person. That is one. That's just one. I have another one that sends me encouraging messages reminding me of who I am and what my purpose is daily. I don't see him all the time. I don't talk to him all the time. But at the very least, I will get a text every single day with some kind of encouragement reminding me of things that I need to remember. And I don't often remember. I fail often at doing it because I try to keep up with it. Naturally, you're like, oh, I feel awful. This person encourages me every day, but I get tied up with my life and I sometimes fail to do it. It doesn't matter because he doesn't change based on what I do or don't do. He continues to keep it moving and keeps delivering the encouragement. Another one of them reminded me that the faster we rise, the faster we fall, which also tells me that any success, anything you want to achieve in life isn't going to come easy. It's going to take time. It's going to take repetition. It's going to be challenging and difficult. You're going to get knocked down, but the winner is the loser specifically that tried one more time. That's the only difference between a loser and a winner, guys. Is the winner was a loser that tried one more time. Don't ever forget that. This person reminded me that. I have another one that I actually started a side business back in 2015, and I have actually failed to really make it begin to rise and become something until this year. I did not have any revenue coming in. I was doing a lot of things, getting a lot of practice, practicing speeches right here at Toastmasters with all of you. Yet I wasn't actually doing anything with it. But this friend challenged me. He said, by the end of the year, this was in October, by the end of the year, you're going to produce this thing that you're saying, I call it a mastermind. It's called a series called Transform You. I started it and I'm almost finished with it beginning on Thursday next week. That will be the end of the first part of a 3-part series. If it weren't for this particular person in my inner circle, I would not have done it because I was preparing to wait another year. I actually said the words to him. I said, I am going to, his name's Robbie. I said, Robbie, I have this great plan and I know I'm going to put it together, but I think I'm going to wait till next year after the holidays. He said, no, this year. If you don't get it done this year, I'm not going to participate in it. So that was a challenge, and I didn't want to let him down because he means that much to me. Why? Because he's invested in me all this time. He's always been a great encouragement. He's been my workout buddy too. I didn't want to let him down, and so I got it done 1 month ahead of schedule. And that leads me to the next thing. You see the big perfection circled. When you set a goal, a lot of times we get really specific. And a lot of people have told us you need to be real specific with your goals. Even at work, right? We got to do SMART goals, right? They got to be specific, time-bound, measurable. We hear all that, and that's great. I'm not against it. I think that's great. If that works for you, keep making SMART goals. But one of the problems is when we haven't gotten used to a habit, and it's something that we've never really ingrained in our minds, is we get specific, we fail once, and then the feeling of failure overwhelms you to the point where you just quit. We are emotional, whether we want to admit it or not, man or woman. If you're in this room, you have emotion. If there's breath in your body, you are emotional. If you don't want to own the fact that you're emotional, then you're denying a truth and a reality that you're not going to escape. Because of that, I think we do need to understand that failure is going to happen. But set yourself up in a way that failure is not necessarily as easy. Because if you believe in your mind you're a failure, you may quit. Here's what I mean. Do something. If you want to work out, work out. Don't set us, I have to lose 20 pounds by 5 months from now. And if at 5 months I'm at 4.5 pounds, oh, I failed, I'm quitting, I'm done. None of that. No. Did you lose 4.5 pounds in 5 months? Great, that's a win because that's better than where you were. So where is your mentality at? Did you have a win or did you get the specific win that you wanted? And how do you really define failure? Is failure setting a goal, which by the way is a goal? You're meant to reach a goal. That's not a guarantee. If I don't do this, I didn't succeed. That's not what a goal is. It's something you're reaching for. But just because you didn't hit the exact target doesn't mean that you failed. Because you did something before, or something now that you didn't do before, and you actually made it further along than you were before. That's actually a win. If the goal is to lose weight, regardless of the number, if you lost weight, you are still moving towards your goal. So I want you to consider that as we move forward. Don't allow perfection to destroy you. I said I wanted to make money this year in my business. That was a goal. And I had all these numbers in my head, and that's great. You know how much I made for my business this year? $200. It's not much. It's something, right? And I can buy lunch maybe several times, share lunch with a few people. But you know what? The thing is that's the first time I've done it in this business. That's a win. I can get excited, and you know what it taught me? I actually know that it's possible now. And because I know that it's possible, I have momentum. Momentum is a leader's best friend. You want to lead something well? Gain some momentum because it builds energy. And when you have that kind of energy, you can move forward. So what are you doing to establish some solid goals for next year? What do you want to be remembered for? What do you want your legacy to be? Because I think a lot of times we set these goals and we don't really consider the impact of who we're going to reach when we accomplish the goals. As we move forward, here's another question for you. Who are you becoming? The goal isn't just about you and what you're going to accomplish. The goal shapes you, it molds you, it makes you better. Have I ever told you the difference between inspiration and motivation? Inspiration, or let's start with motivation. Motivation is this fleeting feeling that you sometimes get when you actually feel like doing something when you get out of bed in the morning. You know what I'm talking about, right? Today you feel like working out, so you get up and you're all excited and you get jacked up. I'm ready to rock. But 3 days later, 4 days later, maybe 5, all of a sudden it starts getting tough because I'm tired of getting up early. It's getting difficult. And so you stop, right? Motivation is fleeting, but inspiration deals with the why that's bigger than you. When the motivation fails, you remember why you must keep on going. So inspiration fuels motivation. So everybody say inspiration fuels motivation.
Inspiration fuels motivation.
So I'm going to close out with this. I want to tell you a story, and I said that I'd give you some science when I gave you the introduction to this. There is a lady by the name of Dr. Caroline Leaf. She's actually a neuroscientist, and she deals with these types of things and how the physiological impacts on the brain when we set goals. And so she actually says, contrary to popular belief, that 21 days to make a habit, it actually takes 63 days to form a habit because of the actual chemical process that happens in the brain. So I'm going to try to do this from memory, but I'm going to kind of explain to you how it works so that when you walk away from here, you kind of understand the emotions that you're feeling when you go throughout this journey next year. Because now you have solid goals, they're bigger than you, and you're going to have big people, right? And you're not going to let perfection destroy you, right? So you're going to have big goals, and you're going to do great things, and you're going to impact lives next year. But in order to do that, I want you to understand the journey you're going to have to go through, especially in the beginning. Because it's going to take at least 2 to 3 months to get this right, at least. So here it comes. In the beginning, when you set a goal, your dopamine and serotonin levels in your brain go and start skyrocketing. So you'll notice whenever you set a goal and you start moving in it and you start seeing a little bit of success in the beginning, you'll notice that you have this high and you start getting all jacked up and excited. You're telling your friends about it, guess what I'm doing? And you're just flying high. Somewhere around day 4 or 5, the serotonin and dopamine levels drop in your brain. That is that moment when you first start saying to yourself, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And you start waning, push through. By day 7, only a few days later, this memory, this habit, that's now, there's actual neurotransmitters and things in the brain that actually begin to change and form. Just like if you cut yourself and it heals and fills in with new cells, new things start forming in the brain. Around day 7, the memory itself starts what she calls denaturing. I am not a neuroscientist. I can't explain this stuff to you in detail, but it's what she called denaturing. When that denaturing process begins to happen, you start to lose momentum again. It becomes even harder to keep moving. But she says that the mind, we have a choice in our minds to choose to keep moving forward anyway. If you make that choice and push through, quickly after day 7, you will begin to get charged back up again, and you will start to feel like it's getting easier. Around day 14, the denaturing process repeats. You start to get challenged again. So now you're at 2 weeks, you're feeling like you were on a flow, and now all of a sudden it feels like you're ready to quit again. Push through. Somewhere around day 21, the proteins inside the brain begin to take shape and form inside your brain where roots, think of like a plant, where the roots begin to sprout out and connect into the soil, and it's harder to rip that plant out. Now you've begun to build roots inside the brain. The process of building an actual new habit is really physically in the brain beginning to form. So although it will be challenging, you will find that it will become a lot easier around 21, but you're not out of the woodwork. What's the phrase? Not out of the woods yet. You're not out yet. You need the roots to grow deeper so that it's really hard to rip that thing out of there. Okay? It takes now up to 63 days. This comes with a routine pattern. You've got to have, if you got to set reminders on your phone, if you got to have friends, those big people we're talking about calling you up, reminding you of why you need to keep moving forward. Whatever it is that you got to do, I'm telling you, if you do it for another 42 days, up at day 63, this neuroscientist tells us that we will form a new habit. I have actually gone 9 months without having sugar, like cakes and ice cream, and this is an Achilles heel for me. I've actually done that before, 8-9 months. And yeah, I would say somewhere around the 2-3 month mark, I noticed that it just became natural. They could set it out in front of me, and that ugly feeling of, I want it, but I don't, that just wasn't there. It wasn't there. I could just look at it and be fine, because now it's rooted in the mind. All right, so what are our 3 things that we're going to do when we set these big, huge BHAGs next year? What are they? Somebody tell me, what's the first one?
Eat all the ice cream you can in 4 days.
Eat all. That wasn't one of them. But good try, Colin. Who else? What's the first one?
Make the Y bigger than you.
Make the Y bigger than you. What's the second one?
Big people around.
And just
Big people. Know your inner circle. Build your inner circle if you don't have one. And what's the third one?
Doesn't have to be perfect.
Doesn't have to be perfect. What does it have to be?
Just try.
Something. Something. Just let it, the only rule is don't let it be nothing. Do something to move yourself forward. So as you move into 2019, I want you to think about who you want to be remembered for, because everything that you're doing rides on it. I want you to fight through this as if other people's lives depend on it, because guess what? They do. You don't think so. But the power that you have to make a difference in this world is passing you by moment by moment. The end of your life isn't guaranteed. And if you don't do what you need to do to accomplish it, people that you're meant to impact are going to miss out. So make your legacy. Thank you.